Today's daf we're going to be learning is Gittin daf lamed. This week's learning is sponsored in loving memory of Miriam David, Malka bat Michael Esther, on her 7th yahrzeit, which took place on the 5th of Sivan, with love from her children and grandchildren. Okay, we're going to get started with, we finished off, we were having a story of a case of a get, which they had said, give the get in 30 days. They sent the messenger had some issue, couldn't bring the get. He went to the court, said, can you take care of it? And the court handled it and they passed it on to somebody else. Rava had said, how can you do this? The guy can't even give the get now. How could he possibly appoint a shaliach? To which they said, no, well, he still could give the get because even though we can't give it today, he was sent as messenger to give the get and it works. But then Rava answered, and then we had this other question, maybe the husband changed his mind, but then Rava said, oh, it was only for betrothal. Chances are you don't really change your mind when you're only betrothed to the woman. You're not really that connected to her yet. But then Rava says, Elha vadai kamebayalam. But this is really a question that I have in this case. Ki mishavu beitin shaliach. So this messenger was appointed by the husband, and then the messenger appointed the court to be in charge, and then the court appointed a new messenger. They said, when the month is up and we're ready, let's appoint the messenger. First of all, it's probably a smart move because already this guy was appointed and he was ready to do it, but over the course of those 30 days, something happened and he could no longer do it. So the court said, let's wait till we're ready to give the get, and then we'll appoint someone. So kimashavu beitin shaliach, when they now appoint a shaliach in place of this other one, bifanav shelo bifanav, does the original shaliach have to be there? Because really, it's him passing it on. Hadran pashta, Rava answered his own question, bein bifanav, bein shelo bifanav. No, he doesn't need to be there. This is something we're going to see in other sugya today, totally unconnected. But things take on a different status when they're done in a court. And the court really becomes your agent to do things. And you don't need to be there if you're passing on to someone else because the court already takes responsibility. And not only did Rava say this, but they sent from Eretz Yisrael, bein b'fanav, bein shelo b'fanav. They also said the same halacha, the same ruling. Now, since we talked about a get about 30 days, they couldn't but help mention this very famous case, which we already learned in Ketubot, and we're going to learn in a few days in the 4th chapter of Gittin. And the real topic that we're going to get to right now, just from here, a short section till we get to the Mishna, is this topic of ones b'gittin. Ones means there were circumstances beyond my control. And the question is, if a husband makes a condition to the get, and then because of circumstances beyond his control, he couldn't fulfill the condition, is that still considered a get or not? So for example, Hahuda Amar, Ilo Atina ad taltin yomin, lehavi gita. Man says, if I don't show up within 30 days, this will be your get. He basically gives the get to the wife and says, but the get is only going to go into effect in 30 days in the event that I don't show up. Right? Possible reasons he could have done this. He was worried maybe he was going to get killed. Maybe he was going in for some mission, something. I just heard a case. My husband was speaking to a well-known posek who told him that he had a story where a guy was going in a mission. He was in some secret unit in the army and he was worried he wasn't going to come back. And he said, I want to write a get to my wife. And they arranged the whole thing. In the end, the guy never showed up at the Dayan's house to take care of it. And he doesn't even know if the guy lived or not. But people actually do this nowadays, apparently. And here was like a real life case that I just heard of this week where someone was at least considering doing this because they were worried they weren't going to come back. So he says, if I don't show up, and then what happened? Well, he goes to get there on the 30th day. This is like leaving things for the last minute. And there's a river and he can't get across. The ferry is on the other side and it's not coming back and he can't get there. And there's only one ferry a day and, he missed the ferry and now he's stuck and he wants to get there because he doesn't want the get to be valid. So what does he do? He starts screaming, right? Look, I'm coming. Yeah, we saw this case. This is it. This is the case we saw. We saw it in Ketubah. And like I said, we'll see it again in a few dapim. Amar Shmuel, lo shmei matya. Shmuel says, this is not considered that you got to the city. It's true, it's beyond your control right now, but what are you going to do, right? It's your fault. This just happened to me. I mean, it's totally unconnected, but I was on my way to my daughter's swimming lesson the other day, and it always takes the exact amount of time. There's never any traffic. Anyway, there was a pride parade, and it was on the other side of town. I didn't think that it was going to affect the traffic there. They closed the road and went, it literally took me for one block, 10 minutes, and I got there late. And, I like in that kind of thing, the teacher doesn't give you any extra time, and it doesn't matter that it wasn't my fault. Like I got there, he said, why were you so late? I said, well, I got stuck in this crazy, unexpected traffic. Who thought to use Waze just to get somewhere that's 10 minutes away? Anyway, So it's a good, right? It was honest, but it was tough luck on me. It didn't matter. I didn't get the extra time of the lesson. Anyway, so he said, look, I'm coming. And they could even see him that he was coming, as opposed to, the swim teacher that was in the pool and didn't have his phone if I even tried to message him. So Amar Shmuel, lo shmei matia. Shmuel says, tough luck. You didn't make it. It's a get. Ha'uda Amar lehu. Now, what's interesting here is the Gemara doesn't say ein ones begitin, which it says the other times it mentions it, but the ein ones begitin is going to come up right now in the next story. This is a little more complicated. He says, if I don't appease her, right, like we're in marital therapy right now. If I don't manage to work things out and the therapist isn't successful, if it's her fault, right? If this doesn't work out, then this will be your get. Now, you got to wonder what kind of husband is already giving the get to his wife with the hopes that somehow they'll reconcile, but okay, says it like that. Azo paisa belowi paisa. Now, he tries to reconcile things, but she is unwilling. Okay, she's just had enough. Amar Rav Yosef, mi yahivle tirkava dinari belowi. Now, before we even get to Rav Yosef, we're going to have two versions of Rav Yosef, and one is going to be basically yesh ones begitin, and one you can claim ones, and one is going to say you can't claim ones in Gittin. So let's understand the situation. He didn't really have money, apparently. Rav Yosef is going to say, and his claim is, I did all I could. I tried lefayes, and so this shouldn't be a get because I did my part in the bargain. So Rabbi Yosef says, you didn't really do your part because there could have been something else you could have done. Did you give her all this money and you didn't, and then she didn't agree? Like you could have paid her enough money that maybe she would agree to stay married to you. Now, he couldn't have. That's the point, right? He couldn't have because he didn't have the money. So he could claim, right? Rav Yosef saying, I don't care that you're anus. It doesn't make a difference. You didn't succeed in your mission. So, ein ones begitin. Ikeda amre, some people say, Amar Rav Yosef, midi tirkava de dinare by lemetavla, hapaisa v'lo ifaisa. What? Was he supposed to? Now, it's saying the same thing, but rhetorically. Was he supposed to pay her money? He tried. He did everything he could, and she just didn't agree. That means that yesh ones begitin, this is a good claim that he can make. I did what I could, and when I meant ipaisa, right? I tried. I did everything in my capabilities. So ha-kaman damar yesh ones begitin, ha-kaman damar ein ones begitin. So this split between Rabbi Yosef is, do we claim is onus a good claim? Which according to the second one, it would be. According to the first version, it wouldn't really be a claim at all. New Mishna. What you have to remember what our topic is and how we are going to get to this totally off-topic topic. So we were talking about presumption of life, right? Do we assume the person is still alive? In what situations, right? And all that. And then we now are talking about a case of a loan. And this is a bit of a strange kind of loan, although we're going to talk about why it makes a lot of sense. I loan you money. You're either a kohen, a levi, or a poor person. If you're one of those three people, I can say to you, instead of you paying me back the money, which is in your best interest and in my best interest, although we'll see maybe not fully, but let's just say for right now, we'll explain why it is in everyone's best interest. Instead of collecting the loan back from you, which is going to be hard for you to pay because you don't really have money, I'm going to, every time I take tithes from my produce, either for the kohen, the truma, or if you're a kohen, or the maaser for the levi, or the maaser ani, the tithe that goes to the poor person, which is only in years 3 and 5. But every time I take it, I'm going to deduct that from your loan. That's going to be how you're going to pay me back. So let's say every month I take, let's say it's a loan of $100. Every month I take 10 lemons from my tree. That is my truma. Let's just go with the kohen case. Okay, it's going to be the same for all of them, but we'll use the kohen case as an example. My truma is 10 lemons a month. Every month I'm going to take 10 lemons. Each 10 lemons are worth $10. We'll get up to $100 in 10 months. And with that way, I'll get my money back. I'll save because I won't have to give it to trumat and maaser. It wasn't mine anyway. So I'll get my money. It'll be very easy for me because I won't have to go collecting money. We all know how hard collecting money is. And you won't have to actually put anything out of pocket, pay it at all. And perfect. And you're really not losing because theoretically you could have gotten the truma from me, but who knows whether you would have or not. So it's in everybody's best interest. Although we'll see that there's some issues to this. So if you're mavem ma'ot, and what does this have to do with anything? You'll see. Mavem ma'ot et hakohen et halevi ve'etani. So I loan you money. Either you're one of those three people. And the deal is I'm going to be mafrish my truma and maaser and use that to deduct the money. I can keep going that whole year or however long it might be until the money is done, assuming you're still alive. That's the whole idea. So I didn't say years 3 and 6 for maaser ani? That's what I said. No, I said something different. No. Years 3 and 6 are the maaser ani years. If I said something different, I said 3 and 5. Sorry. Thank you for correcting me. 3 and 6. So now, if you remember, the maaser sheni goes the other years. That's how it works. That extra tithe is either for maaser sheni I bring into Jerusalem or it's for maaser ani. Okay, so now what happens? I can assume you're alive this whole time. I don't have to worry, number one, that you might have died. I also don't have to worry that if you're poor, that you became rich. Because if you became rich, then this maaser ani isn't yours in any case, and then how could I possibly be taking this back? So I can assume, again, chizkat, whatever it was, we can keep within it. But meitu, what if you actually died? Then what happens? If you want to continue this procedure, then I have to go to the heirs, assuming, by the way, only if, right? We don't go to the children if they didn't inherit anything. Okay, if you die and you have nothing to your name, okay, you have no, let's talk about land, let's say, no land to your name. We'll talk about land soon later. If you have no land to your name or no property, no assets, so anything you owe anyone is gone. But if there's an estate, right, this would be true today. If there's an estate, then they'll take it from the estate. So that's what we're talking about here, the yorshim. You can continue to take it, right, because there's an estate. But if you want to keep with this arrangement, you have to work it out with the people who are now the owners of the money, which are the heirs. But if you made this whole arrangement in a court and you said, this is the way we're going to do this loan, then you can just continue. Because again, this goes back to, I said we were going to get back to the court. Once things are done in the court, it's like a done deal and the yorshim have no choice but to keep up with that. But if it was just between you and the owner, then you have to deal with the children. Now the Gemara asks, question number 1. This is a bit of a weird thing. I'm going to basically take the tithes, separate them, and then take them for myself. They were never in your hands, so I never really got money back from you. It's a little bit weird. When I take trumat and maaser, it theoretically belongs potentially to any kohen. So you never owned it for me to then say, this is mine from you. And Rashi even says it in the language that you have to have nitina, like it's missing. If you look at the first Rashi, he'ach yatsa yedei nitina. There has to be some sort of giving of you to me. And that never happens because you're never the owner of those tithes once I took them. It's a little bit weird. So we're going to have 3 possible answers, and then we'll say, why didn't each one hold like the other? Let's say you're my next door neighbor and we're best friends and you're a kohen. And every time I have trumat, I give it to you. So even though I didn't give it to you and you give it back to me, but since I always give you my trumat, it's basically clear none of the other kohanim have any hopes of ever getting my trumat because they know I always give it to you. So therefore, or if you're poor or whatever it might be, in that case, this Mishna would only work, by the way, in that case, according to Rav. It would be that I'm in my house, I take the tithes, and then I'd have to do this one extra step. I'd have to go to, let's say, one of my older children and say to them, listen, I'm giving you this stuff, acquire it on behalf of Julie, let's say, and then it would be as if it was Julie's, and then I'm going to take it back. Okay, but Julie doesn't need to be there. I could just do it with anybody in my household if I want. Ula Amar Hamani Rabbi Yossi. This Mishnah holds like Rabbi Yossi, an individual opinion. Amar Asuat She'eno Zoche Kezoche. Okay, the Beit Din has the power to basically, even if you didn't actually do an act of acquiring, it's as if you did. So we're going to look at this all as kind of fictitious, but we understand this is probably how you understood the Mishnah in the first place. It's kind of as if you were Zoche, even though you weren't really, and the courts have the power to do this, like the law has the power to do this, so that's really what's going on. So now, why didn't they each hold like the other? Well, Kulu Karav Lo Amre, the other two didn't hold like Rav, because B'makari Lo Katane, it didn't say anywhere that we're talking about someone who you always give trumat and maaser to. If it wanted to say that it only works in that case, then it should have specified it in the Mishnah. Likewise with Shmuel. Shmuel Lo Ka'amre B'mizaka Lo Katane, it doesn't say you have to do this lizakot and take it back, and it should have specified that. And And Ula's weakness is that we don't generally say that the Mishnah follows an individual's opinion when most people disagree with him. So basically, that's why it's a weakness in each of the arguments. Now we're going to get into a braita that sounds a lot like the Mishnah in the beginning, but then it's going to diverge into all sorts of other issues that come up with a loan of this type. And we're going to get off our topic of chezkat chayim and that, we're presuming someone's alive. More we're going to talk about issues like loans on interest and how do we avoid this becoming, or are there things here that could end up like interest? What rate do we set the price of, this is going to sound more like a sugya of Bava Metzia, what rate do we set the price of the produce, right? Produce changes, it fluctuates. So on what rate are we going? So let's go back to our example. 10 lemons are worth $10 each. And then over a course of 10 months, we'll get to $100, which was what the loan was. Let's talk about what if the price drops to 5? What if we set the price at 10 and it goes, the value of lemons goes up? So we're going to talk about all these things. So Tanu Rabbanan, quote from a braita. The beginning sounds exactly like our Mishna. So you made this deal with the kohen, levi, or poor person that you're going to take, basically deduct from your trumat maaser. So it starts off with, you can assume they're alive still. You can agree with him that the malve always gets, if the price drops, then you're going to get lemons at the lower price. That means if 10 lemons are worth $10 and then they drop to 5. So instead of I'm still going to take my 10 lemons, but they're going to be worth $5 instead of $10. And it's going to take you longer to pay back that loan. I'm going to get more of my truma for a longer time. It's going to basically benefit the malve. Why do we do it to benefit the malve? Because, so first of all, it's not sure how to understand this. Does it mean I'm allowed to do this? Or does it mean it's always this way? So first, they're going to assume it means it's allowed. Then they're going to say, well, that's obvious. You can always make any deal you want when you're loaning the money. Then they're going to end up saying it means that this is the case. So if the prices drop, I'm going to get the lemons at the lower price, which means I can keep taking lemons. Instead of taking it for 10 months, I'll now take it for 20 months, let's say. Okay, I'll still take my 10 lemons, but they're only worth 5, and it'll take you longer to get up to what you're owed. And I basically get truma that I don't have to give for a much longer time. And why is that? We always want to benefit the malve, the one who's loaning the money, so that they'll continue to want to loan money in the future. And there's no interest here. Now, some people connect this to the first case, but I'm going to explain the way Rashi does, which is if we came up with a set price, and we said, we're always going to assume, even though the price might fluctuate over the course of the next year, we're going to assume that the price, we're going to work out our deal, 10 lemons every month till we get to 100 at the price of 10. Let's say lemons go up in value. Now, theoretically, I should have to be giving less to deduct, right? And the extra should go to truma, but I get to keep it because we set that rate. So I gain now, and that's not considered interest, even though in a similar case, with a sale, we actually say that there's interest. Let's say I go to a store and I buy fruits, but I go to the store, I pick out the fruits and then I purchase them. In this case, I ordered them in advance. They hadn't yet set the rates, but I ordered them at a particular rate, okay? But you don't give me the fruits for another few days. Now, this has the semblance of a loan. It's only interest on a rabbinic level because you get the money, and you only give me the value of the money in a few days. So you basically have the cash in hand for a few days. It's like you loan me money. When you give me the fruits, if the rate changed and the value of the produce went up, when you give me back, right, basically there's rebate there because you end up giving me less fruit and you gain because you now have the money for, right, at the time, if it was worth something, now it went up. So you're giving me less and you're gaining the extra fruit that you didn't give me the day that the sale. If it had gone through the day of the sale, right? It's like, I know when I order online at the store, at Rami Levi, for example. So when you finish, they tell you, when you go to change, if you go to update, there's a message that says, just be warned that any sale prices, right? You're going to lose whatever sale prices were the day that you made the order, if you're now changing your order, so that there's things that fluctuate. And, the question always is, who gains from that fluctuation? So basically, in a regular case, that would be considered rebate because the person who got the money at first was like the lender, ends up gaining, okay? But in this case, it's not rebate, okay? They basically say it's not rebate. We'll see why when we get to the Gemara. The Gemara is going to try to go through all these cases in the braita and explain. Ein shvit mishamatato. If the shmita year comes, usually loans are canceled. This kind of loan doesn't get canceled. If you want to change your mind about this and say, you know what, I'd rather collect the money, I can't do that. Let's say my field, now here's the risk. Okay, we didn't talk about this before. If I say I'm going to pay you in tithes, what if there's a drought and my field dries up and I have no produce? And then I say, oh my goodness, I'm never going to get this loan back. And I have what's called yei'ush. Total, I said, forget it, this isn't happening. And then next year or a month later, everything starts to grow, a miracle happens, I lost my loan already because I gave up on getting it. Okay, this was like a lost item. If I lose something very expensive, very valuable, but then I get, let's go back to my car that was stolen. If after 2 days they hadn't found my car, I would have had yei'ush. I would have said, I'm never getting my car back. If they actually find my car later, then it's not mine anymore. If somebody else has it, it's no longer mine. Okay, now you have to think maybe they should still return it. But okay, theoretically, I've given up ownership of it. So once I gave up I said, I'm never going to get this loan back, the loan is gone. So there are some risks here to the malvin. So now we're going to go through one by one. Amar Mar, each time they're going to kind of quote. This is right. This is what they said in the braita. So the Gemara says, I told you already this sugya, which is pshita. Isn't it obvious? Of course, if they agree on the low rate, whatever the rate's going to be as time goes on, we're always going to go by the lower rate for the malveh to the benefit of the lender. Obviously, it should work. Anyone can always make that arrangement. What we're saying is no. Any case where this happens, it's automatic. Even if you didn't make that agreement, this is the agreement. You're always going to get the lower rate, unless, of course, we said you locked in the price, and that's a different story. So this we explained, if you lock in the price at this rate, and then they go up in value, the malva will gain, and it's not considered interest, even though they're gaining more money, more value. This is a very interesting thing, and it's hard to understand what this means. I'll go with one interpretation, which I really like. We already discussed that if I have no produce, I'll end up getting nothing. Therefore, when they do, there is produce and it goes up in value, it's also not considered ribit. What is ribit? You give money, you get the money back and more. It's more like a guarantee type thing. It's like putting your money in a CD or something very safe, where you know you're going to get back at least the value and more. If you put your money in the stock market, it might go down, you might lose your money. So here, since you might actually never get your money back, therefore, it doesn't have the regular criteria of a regular loan. And that's why there's no interest in it, because it's not really like a regular loan, because you might actually lose all your money. And therefore, even if you gain more, it's not considered interest. Why is it not canceled in the shmita year? So the psukim by shmita talk about lo yigos, which means you can't collect it. Now, this isn't a loan that you're actually collecting. What does collecting mean? You go to the person's house and you get your loan back, right? Directly from them, whether it's in their house or wherever it is, but it's collecting from them. Here, you're not collecting from them, you're taking it from your own stuff. So it doesn't fit the criteria where the shmita year will cancel it. But you can't change the arrangement. You can't say, listen, this isn't working out for me, I'd rather just take the money from your property. Amar Papa, Loshanu ela balabayit b'kohen. Actually, it's only me who can't change my mind about getting the money back from you. Aval kohen b'balabayit and balachzor choser. If you decide for whatever reason that you want to change your mind and you want to give me money instead of this arrangement, we can. How do we know this? Ditnan. Natan lo ma'ot v'lo mashachim menu perot yachol lachzor. This answer is a little bit odd because it really only answers the one side of why you can change your mind. It doesn't really answer why I can't change my mind. And theoretically, it should be both ways. If you could change my mind, then I could change my mind based on this Mishna. And the commentaries all ask, but they don't really answer. They answer the question. I wasn't satisfied by any of the answers I saw, so I'm going to leave it and not answer. Sometimes the questions are always better than the answers. But what are they basically proving it from? The way to explain this very simply is ma'ot lo konot. If you remember, when we give money, that's not the final act of that's not an act of transaction. Transaction with movables is only by mashicha, pulling the object. So in this case, only money was passed. So if I gave money and I didn't take the fruits, like the example I brought before, there we were talking about interest, this is something else, the fruit owner or me really could always change their mind about it. Okay, they could say, oh, I'm not interested in this deal. So that's how we learn that the kohen could change their mind, because all that happened here was money. The borrower got money and nothing. I didn't do any mashicha of any sort. I didn't pull anything to acquire anything. So therefore, they can change their mind. Why I can't is a good question. So if I gave up of ever getting my money back, because my land fell apart. So pshita, the Gemara says, isn't that obvious that I lose it? It's simple laws of yei'ush. That's how yei'ush works. Yei'ush means basically I've given up. It's a case where some stem grew with a little bit something on it, like a bud, and maybe I had hopes that something might grow from there. You might think that stalk is something. Hamash Malan is coming to teach you, no, that's not enough. I really did have yei'ush. Time. Now we're going to say, what if I made this whole arrangement in Beitin, umetu, and then they died? Mafrish alehen. Now let's say, in this case, they're going to say, let's say there's no heirs. Comes Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov and says, there's a fascinating line. Mafrish alehem bechizkat oto hashevet. I can still collect because there's other people in their tribe. Okay, now when it works with kohen and levi, you can maybe somewhat understand they're all somewhat related, right? Someone's got something there. Okay, someone's going to inherit him somewhere there. So bizchutam, I can still keep collecting because again, I did it in the court. Once I do it in court, not only if there's heirs, but even if there's people, other kohanim, other levites. Here comes an even more interesting one. All the poor people will support what the court does, basically. So I can still not give my maaser to other poor people and take it on account of this loan, even though the person's still dead, based on the Jewish poor people in the city. Rabbi Achi Omer, you can take it based on not just Jewish poor people, this is even stranger, but Jews of the world. Poor people of the world. My benayu, what's the difference between them? What is he talking about? I'm a bet now. What he means is, let's say there's no Jewish people in the city, poor people, but there are poor kutim. Okay, now the kutim, there was a big debate. Are kutim gerei emet, were they real converts, or were they gerei arayot, or were they just converted because they were scared, in which case we don't really call them Jews. So if you say only Jewish ones, then you're not including kutim because you don't think kutim are part of it, of the Jewish people, the broader Jewish people. But if you think the kutim were real legitimate converts, that's the guy who says aniyei olam. Aniyei olam doesn't really mean all the poor people in the world. It means even if there were no Jewish poor people, but there were kuti poor people in your city, since kutim were considered converts who were legitimate converts, you can also basically take the maaser ani, assuming that they're giving up on their portion of the maaser ani for this purpose. Now, why would aniyim give up their portion of maaser ani so that I could get my money back? Or why would other levites right? Now, it doesn't mean they actually did this, but we're assuming that we can view it as if they gave up their rights to get their trumat maaser so that I could get my loan back. The reason is very simple, and Rashi also says it at the bottom line, the last two lines in Rashi on the page. Ho'il utakanat aniyim hu nichaluhu l'chol aniyei Yisrael. This is the simple, and we're going to get to it in the 4th chapter for Tikkun Olam of why they put prusbol in against the loans being canceled on the shmita year, because no one's ever going to lend money if they're not protected. We have to protect the lenders so that they'll lend money in the future. So if you say we made this arrangement, which is for sure in the best interest of all poor people to make an arrangement like this, because they never really have to pay back their money, then we want to make sure the lenders are interested in doing this, and we want to protect them so that they'll continue to loan money to us. So even though it's a loss for these other poor people, because maybe they would have gotten them the maaser ani or the maaser levi or the kohen, right? It's still in their best interest because now people will loan the money because they'll know that even if the person dies, they'll still be able to get their money back. However, if the ani got rich, it's actually counterintuitive. Ein mafrish alav. I lose my loan, basically. I can't get my money back if you became rich because we made this arrangement and I can't do this arrangement anymore because you're now rich. So the money can't, right? So if you die, I can get it because of the other poor people. But if you get wealthy, then you're not part of maaser ani, it's not yours. I can't take it against the loan. And even though what's ironic is even though you now have money and theoretically could pay back your loan, it doesn't work You don't have to, because our whole arrangement was I'm only taking it from the tithes. So we can't switch back to, I can't say to you, now I want you to pay me in cash. And you basically win it, right? You acquire whatever the loan was, it's now all yours and you get to keep it. Now they ask an obvious question. When it came to death, I was protected. When it came to you becoming rich, I'm not protected at all. Right? This definitely goes against the Malva's needs. To which they answer, it's very common that people die, but it's not very common that people who are poor become wealthy. How often does that happen? And especially in those days, right? They didn't have the lottery, right? No, but anyway, but it's very rare that people who are poor all of a sudden become rich. And therefore they didn't say there was no need to arrange a takana for this, because again, it's all a matter of, will I go through with this, worrying that this will happen? I'm not going to worry that maybe you'll become wealthy and this whole thing will dissolve. Rav Papa, in case you weren't convinced, we're now going to prove that Rav Papa says, based on quips that people say on the street, that it's clear that people don't really become wealthy very often. If somebody tells you your friend died, believe it. But it asher, if someone tells you so-and-so got wealthy, lo tasher, don't believe it. It's not necessarily true. Again, this might change nowadays because job opportunities, right, do allow for a lot more flexibility, at least in some communities, flexibility between able to, kind of make a better living. But again, people could claim still not nowadays, right? People who grow up under the poverty line often stand under the poverty line. It's very hard to get out of that. Certainly in those days, it was much more difficult. So now they say if you die, you have to take reshut. You have to ask the heirs, and now we're going to get to the issue of the heirs. So the braita says, Tanya, Rebbe Omer, Yorshim Sheyarshu. We're talking about heirs who inherited. To which the Gemara says, Umi ka Yorshim Dilo Yarte. What's an heir if he doesn't inherit? What are you talking about? Why do you have to tell us specifically it's an heir who inherits? Ela Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Sheyarshu Karka velo Sheyarshu Ksapim. It has to be that they inherited land, because loans in general are liened to land. Now, even in this case where you're not taking it from their land, but still the land is there against the loan. But if it's just money that they inherited, then this is done. Okay, that is not, as I said before, if there's nothing in the estate, then you can't collect, basically your loan is gone. Okay, but in Jewish law, it's not if there's nothing in the estate, if there's no land. If there's just movables or cash, that doesn't go opposite the loan, and then you can't collect this money at all. Amar Rabbi Yonatan, now we get to the classic Gemara kind of question. Hiniach melo machat, gover melo machat. If you left over a teeny piece of land, let's say he dies with a little teeny piece of land, then you can only collect the amount of money of the loan against the piece of land. So if the loan was $100 and the land is worth $5, you can only collect $5. Melo kardom, if it's bigger than the size of a spade, govem melo kardom, then you could take the size of the amount of a spade. It could be a hammer type thing, some sort of, this is obviously bigger. A machat is a needle. This is a bigger tool. For Rabbi Yochanan Amar, afilu, he disagrees. He says, afilu hiniach melo machat, govem melo kardom. Ukemase diktina dabai. He says, even if you leave over a teeny piece of land, you can actually get back your whole loan. Okay? It doesn't go by the size. Any land already means you can now collect your loan. Well, what do we know? There's a story that you might remember. Ketubot wants to tell you the story. There was a case where there were two orphans whose father died. He owed, let's say it was 100 zuz. And the land, they had land, he left land, which was liened to the loan, but the land was only worth 50 zuz. So what does the guy do? He collects the land for his loan. So he basically only gets half his loan back. But what happened? The orphans said, we want the land back. So they buy back the land because they had money. So they buy back the land for 50 zuz. And then the guy says, oh, great. Now I have land at 50 zuz and I'm taking the 50 zuz against my loan. And he ends up with this 150 zuz of property collecting his entire loan. So what do you see here? Even if you don't have enough land for the loan, you could still theoretically pay back the entire loan with that little amount of land. So basically it's not the same case, but it enables you, if there's just a little bit of land for the heirs, you can continue to collect this loan from your tithes against the loan. And because of that little piece of land. So there was a machloket basically about do you only get up to the amount of land there is or not. Tanu Rabbanit. Yisrael, now from here to the end of the daf, we're going to have this one braita, that we're going to read right now and not yet understand. Then the Gemara is going to understand it in 3 different ways. The first 2 ways, they're going to say, no way, no, it can't possibly be, until they explain it in a 3rd way. Yisrael she'amar levi. I'm a Yisrael. I go to you, you're a Levite, and I say to you, maaser yesh lecha biyadi. I have some maaser of yours in my house, right? Which basically means I've separated the tithe and it's yours. So I'll give it back to you, okay? Ein chosheshim trumat maaser shelo. This is a very, like I said, we're not going to understand this yet, but we'll understand the basics. What's trumat maaser? It means when you get maaser as a Levi, you're supposed to take 1/10 of that and give it to a kohen. So we don't have to worry that there's trumat maaser mixed in here. Again, don't assume you understand anything yet. It's okay. But if I say, instead of just saying, I have some maaser of yours in my house, but I say, I have a certain amount, I give you the amount of maaser in my house that's yours. We have to be worried that there's trumat maaser. Again, we have no idea, but the main thing we understand is that once we give a measurement, there's a possibility that the maaser was already, the trumat maaser maybe was taken or something like that. Okay, so let's figure out what this means. So the Gemara already says, my kamar, they don't understand what it means, so don't worry, it's not just you. Amar Abai, Abai says, means the following, Hachi kamar. Yisrael she'amar levi maaser yesh lecha biyadi, v'helach damav. If I go to you and I say, I have maaser of yours in my house, I'm going to, instead of giving you the maaser, I'm going to give you the value of it, and I'm going to keep the maaser. So if I didn't tell you a particular amount of how much maaser of yours was in my house, then then there's no way I can basically assume this 100 shekels worth of produce that of maaser that's now in my house. I can assume that all of it's mine, and it's not like you used some of it and said, oh, I know Michelle has maaser of mine, and I have to take truma on the maaser that's in my house. Why don't I use that maaser, separate from there the truma that for the truma from the produce I have in my house? Okay, we'll see later that you're not really supposed to do that. Okay, but basically we're going to say if I didn't specify how much maaser, then there's no way that you took truma maaser on something you have in my house because you don't even know how much maaser I had in my house. So therefore, there was no way trumat maaser is measured. It's an exact 10th. So let's say you have, let's say I had a pound in my house and you had 10 pounds in your house and you had to separate a pound of that. You could theoretically have said, oh, I'll use the pound of maaser that's in Michelle's house and that will be my truma. In which case, if I buy it from you and then you did that, theoretically, right, it could all, right, let's say you did it before even, then what's going to happen? All this maaser I just bought is not actually mine because it belongs to a kohen because it's truma. So I don't have to worry about that. I bought it. I can assume it's all mine. However, and that's because I didn't specify an amount. So there's no way you could have taken trumat maaser. And that the case I gave was where I told you exactly how much. But if I didn't tell you how much, then no. But if I told you how much, maaser yesh biyadcha, if I told you that, then and even if I gave you the money for it, once you know exactly how much maaser you have in my property, maybe you'll have used it for your maaser to take the truma on the maaser that's in your house. So they say, what are you talking about? What? We're assuming you're a thief, you're a bad person. You're going to take money for something and use it for truma, and then treat it both as your own and not as your own. In other words, even if you did it before, then you wouldn't buy it from me. You'd say, listen, it's true you have it and it's true it's mine, but I already made it truma and I'm not going to give you the money for it, right? You'd have to be a liar, cheater, thief to do that kind of thing. So we're not worried about that. So it can't possibly be. He explains, case number 2, we're going to basically neutralize the Russia issue by doing this, but we're still going to have the issue, as I told you before, you can't really take truma on something that's in your property from, right, using truma, like the produce from somewhere else. That's called mina mukaf. Has to be all in the same place when you do your truma. Like all the produce has to be together and then you separate it. So that's going to be the second problem with this. But first, let's read it. Hachi kamar. This is the case. Yisrael she'amar liben levi. I go to you and I talk to you about your fathers. I have maaser in my house that I promised I would give to your father. Maaser la'avicha biyadi. But instead of giving it to you, your father's no longer alive. Instead of giving it to you, here's the value of it. Now, you don't have to worry. We don't know. The father's not here. Maybe the father knew he had this maaser, and therefore maybe he used it for truma against his maaser he had in his house. But if you say, your father knew it was a particular amount that your father has in my property, and here's the and I'm paying you for it. You have to worry that maybe this isn't yours to be able to eat. Maybe it's actually truma and it belongs to kohanim. To which the Gemara says, as I already kind of prefaced, but we're assuming your father was a chaver, was a person who keeps these laws properly. And therefore, we're not worried that your father did something that was against the law. You're not allowed to take truma that's sitting in my house on your produce that's in your house. It all has to be in one place. So that can't be. Ela Amar Rav Ashi. So Rav Ashi brings the explanation. Hachi Kamar. Ben Yisrael Sha'amar levi. I'm now the son of the owner of this stuff. So I'm not myself anymore. I'm the son of, or the daughter of. And I go to the Levi and I say to the Levi, Hach Amar li Abba. My father told me that maaser lecha biyadi, that there's maaser of mine, of yours in my house. Or maaser lavicha biyadi, or it doesn't matter whether it's yours or your father's, okay? Once we already make it my father's, you'll see why there's a difference here. Chosheshin letrumat maaser shebo, kevan de lo kitz lo hava metaken lebal habayit. What's the issue here? You still have to take, now it's switching this entirely. When you get that, okay, now, if I say there's maaser that's been sitting here from when our parents were alive or my father, okay, and then I give it to you. Now, we don't know what my father did with this produce. But if all that we knew was that there was some amount of maaser, we didn't know how much maaser, then basically we're not worried that my father took truma already. In other words, maybe, even though you're the one obligated to take the truma, but maybe people like to just have things done properly. Some people like that. They just want it done right away. They don't like teva, things that aren't for true trumat maaser. So I separated the maaser. I put it in a pile. This is my father did this. He put it in a pile and separated it for you. And then potentially, maybe from that, he also separated the trumat maaser. So if we didn't know of any, there was no particular amount given to this, and the father just said there was maaser, and he didn't say how much, then we have to assume he didn't take trumat maaser from it because there was no amount. So when you get this now, when I give it to you, you're going to have to separate the trumat maaser. But if it's kor maaser lecha biyadi, if my father told me I had a core of maaser of yours, of roots, let's say, in my house, or kor maaser lavicha, or her father's, a core maaser of her father's in my house, and chosheshin the trumat maaser sheba. We're not worried about trumat maaser, meaning when I give it to Ruth, she doesn't have to take truma from it. Because we assume that every chaver who has a set amount of maaser in his house is going to have already separated out the truma from it. Okay? Kevan dekit, since he knew the amount, tikune tatne balabayit. Ruth must have, my father, must have fixed it already when it was sitting in my house. Because he didn't like to have those things laying around not fixed up. So even though he hadn't given you the maaser was kind of with your name on it, and the truma he already separated out and gave to the kohen. So when you get it, you actually don't have to take trumat maaser. To which the Gemara asks, well, and with this question, I can take trumat maaser for you. Isn't it an obligation on the levite, not on me? Why would my father have taken trumat maaser on your produce? Even though we kind of tried to make an argument for it, right? Why would he do that? And to which the Gemara says, it's no problem. It accords with his opinion. The Tanya, we'll see tomorrow what he says and how that accords with this opinion that we can be, and then it becomes the opposite of what we said before. When you have a measurement, we can assume that already my father separated the maaser, and the whole issue is my father's not here to ask. But we can make an assumption that he must have. Again, this is more assumptions we're making about how humans behave, and therefore it works. Okay, review of the daf. So we started with this question. When a shaliach makes a shaliach in the court, Zed designates the next shaliach in his stead. Does it have to be in front of him or not? We said it has to be in front of him. Then we talked about ones begittin. We brought two cases. One, there were two versions of it. And one said, we don't accept ones begittin. That was the guy who was trying to get across the river and couldn't get there. And the get was a good get because he didn't fulfill the condition. It doesn't matter if it was beyond his control or not. Then we got into this whole case about loaning someone money, which we said was in the best interest of both parties to then accept the loan from the tithes. And then we talked about all sorts of issues about it. Do you have to assume can you assume the person's still alive? What if they do die? What cases does it go to the heirs? Does it not go to the heirs if they have land? Do you have to make a new arrangement with the heirs? Yes, if you didn't go to the court, but if you had done the whole thing in the court, then no. We talked about there's no interest issues, how we set the rates. We talked about you can't change your mind about it, although you could change your mind. I can as the lender. If I gave up on it, the loan is gone. And then we went to this issue of, right, we went to the land, the heirs have to have land. We talked about the two possibilities. What if they don't have enough land against the loan? Can you collect the whole loan or not? And then we ended with this case about the maaser in my property. And we had 3 explanations till we finally found the third one that actually worked in terms of what the braita is talking about. With that, we'll finish today's daf. Have a great day, everyone.